The first thing I want to say really is I think the world's boss. I think it's gorgeous. Every time I look through my Instagram feed, I'm astonished by all the creativity, all the amazing things people are doing with their friends or to support other people. And just being here at TEDxBedford today, reminds me of all the incredible things that we can do in the world. But I think that's why it makes it even harder for me to ignore injustices, to ignore hunger, to ignore poverty, to see that people are still working ridiculous hours but might not get a living wage, and they're still hungry even if people have got 3 jobs. I just don't understand that, because I think we live in an incredible world where people are doing brilliant things. So how can that still happen? I grew up in a very low income area in Everton, in Liverpool, in the 1980s. So saw inequality, saw incredibly hard-working people, but there were structures stopping them from fulfilling their potential and from them supporting other people as well. I don't really want charity to be in the world. We would often have people who wanted to do something for us and would want to give us money or give us shoes, but we didn't want their shoes. We wanted to be able to afford our own shoes. We wanted to be able to fulfill our potential and the potential of the community and support people. And there was structures that were stopping that. From the age of 3, I've been an activist. This little boy with a mullet is actually me. Squatting in local housing to save good local housing from demolition that would have split up a whole community of generations of people that were very close-knit and needed each other for support. We campaigned, age 3, with the community. It says pulpit power, because we got both bishops in Liverpool involved, we got media involved, and we won this campaign, and the houses are still there, which is an incredible thing for the community to have, and gave lots of hope and helped people go off and campaign for more things to support them and to support others. So I really believe activism can work. But I've also seen passion, good intention and hard work that hasn't turned into positive change. So today I want to talk about 3 worries I have about activism and a tool that I'm trying to grapple with activism. I've been very lucky throughout uni I've been a campaigner, and the last 8 years I've been a professional campaigner for different NGOs. I've been to Ghana, where I've seen people create small businesses that are an alternative to business that just supports big corporations. I've been in Kenya, where I've seen people campaign on the ground with our partners and beneficiaries, with Christian Aid I used to work with, who have got access to healthcare for HIV and AIDS that they hadn't had before. And I've seen in the UK, when I worked for Oxfam, UK campaigners campaigning against Coca-Cola to say you need to make sure you have 0 tolerance on land grabs. And they did that, and it made a massive change worldwide for small-scale farmers. So I've seen that things can change. But there's 3 things I worry about with activism, and you'd be surprised, but I think there's one tool that for some of them, it can challenge and grapple and tackle the issue. And the tool, if you hadn't guessed, is craft, which for me is more cross-stitch and hand embroidery. When I mean craft, that's what I mean. And the first thing I notice with activism that I struggle a lot with is our normal default is to sign petitions, tell people what to do. It's very transactional, it's very external, it's telling other people to change things. But surely if we want to change the world, we need to start with ourselves. We need inner activism first. Surely we should start with ourselves. We should start with what are our root morals and values. If we say that we respect and love people, are we doing that? Are we practicing what we preach? If we want people to have a living wage, are we buying ethically? Where's my clothes made from? All of those questions we should be thinking about. They're really uncomfortable to think about. I don't want to think about them most of the time. It's not attractive, it's not fun. But craft is a really brilliant tool that's very meditative because it's very repetitive. It helps us exercise our inner monologues, which we often don't make time to do in such a busy world we live in now because we're online so much and there's so many distractions. It helps us do critical thinking that we might not normally, because we've got this small, soft thing in front of us that creates a safe space for us to ask ourselves these uncomfortable questions because we have this comfort of craft. It takes hours to do. If you try and do it fast, you mess up. If you're stitching a message about inequality and about our role or other people's role, you're really thinking and reflecting very deeply about what that message is. because you wouldn't stitch it if you didn't believe in it, and you wouldn't take ownership of it if you hadn't created this physical, tangible thing. It's a really empowering tool. I've made myself I embroidered a footprint for myself, and it's on my bookshelf before I leave my bedroom door every morning. I can glance at it. I know what it says about being a good global citizen and looking at what's my journey in life. Am I making a positive difference? Am I making a negative one? And before I leave the house, I spot it, and it immediately reminds me not to go on autopilot and just carry on in this busy world we live in, but stop and think intentionally about what I do. How am I treating my neighbour? Where am I getting my breakfast from in the mornings? Is it sustainable? Am I having a positive difference on the world? Am I having a negative one? And can I change that? And sometimes we can't because things are complex, but at least I'm asking myself these questions. And I think that's really important that we start with inner activism, and craft is a great way to do that. The second worry I have about activism, I'm a bit of a worry if you hadn't noticed, is that, again, often the default is to demonize people. It's very confrontational, it's very aggressive. I don't know about you, but I don't like fights. But it tends to be a fight between us and them. There's winners, there's losers. If we want long-term change, surely we need to work together, regardless of whether our ideologies are different. There will be common cause, there will be ways we can work together and use each other's strengths and support each other in our weaknesses, and really try and have long-term change where we help change people's hearts and minds, or encourage people and challenge people, but in a loving way. So I think we need gentle activism. It sounds like a contradiction, but if you look throughout history, South Africa and apartheid, you know, they had amazing conflict resolutions. It was highly innovative because they knew they needed both sides to work together to make sure that segregation didn't happen again. My mum is brilliant at knowing exactly what to say to really pull at my heartstrings to make me change. She knows, like most of yours, that if she says, "I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed," it's so much more powerful than if she stood with a placard or a megaphone and told me I was wrong and I needed to do this. She says, "I'm not angry and disappointed," which means I know that she loves me, she values me, she knows I could do brilliant things and she believes I can, but I've done something wrong and she's going to let me figure out what that is. And if I don't know what's wrong, I can ask her and we can have a conversation. I use craft as a conversation starter to try and gently challenge each other as well as challenge myself, to encourage each other as well, but also as a tool to get us to move forward and take action. I do cross stitch, that's street art, or I make things for different people. Everything I do is trying to be small and beautiful, not big and brash. I hang it off eye level, so it's not saying look at me, and it's not about fame or ego. It's about leaving something somewhere relevant, like a mini protest banner outside an unethical shop where fashionistas walk past, and provoke people to think, where are my clothes made? Am I part of the problem of an industry? Am I part of the solution? It's reminding people to think intentionally, to question ourselves, but it's very beautiful. I use lots of yellows because it's a hopeful colour rather than black and red. I try and use curly fonts because I know the power of fonts, and I read up on that type of stuff because I'm a bit of a geek. And I try and put them in places that are irrelevant to the issue, wherever they are, to cause these conversations, to gently challenge people using a very delicate form, which is craft, it's fabric, it's foot, it might be frayed at the edges. They're all very unique, so whoever sees it knows that someone spent a lot of time on this. It's very unique, and they're much more likely to say to their friend in the pub, "I just saw this really weird thing, what do you think?" Or tweet it, or Instagram it, or Pinterest it. And all of this stuff people around the world do, which is amazing. And it's a very gentle way of challenging us. It's not there to make us feel better, but it is there to say, if we want to be the best global citizen we can be, let's work hard at it, because we won't do it by not doing anything at all. We have to work hard at it. Because the images are very small and beautiful and timeless and universal, they've been picked up by media and books and places all over the world, which was never my intention, and I never asked for it. But what's really brilliant is that activism is getting out side of the activism bubble where you wouldn't see it. So in fashion magazines, where they ask for me to do 3 projects for their readers that are bespoke to them, talk to them, or when I was a columnist in a craft magazine, I knew that every month I could get people thinking about social injustice, but around this beautiful image of craft, and gently engage in people. When I craft in public on my own or with small groups, not large groups, it's a way that people ask what you're doing. We always stitch small words, so people look at you and give you a little smile, and you smile back, and they might ask what you're doing, and I can say, oh, I'm stitching a quote by Gandhi on inequality, what do you think? And we have conversations, so it's about people coming to us and initiating that conversation and us having a conversation. And sometimes it means we end up with more questions than answers, but I think that's really valuable as well. These things are messy and complex, so we need to keep thinking. And the world's always changing, so often we need new solutions and new answers. I had one experience where my local politician wasn't engaging with me at all. And I was sending her petition cards and online petitions. I was sending a lot of stuff, and I genuinely cared about a lot of things. And for me, inequality is the root cause of lots of things that I see, whether it's tax avoidance, sweatshops, even climate change issues. It's all complex, but it's all linked together. I got an email from her office telling me to stop contacting them because it was a waste of my time and their time, and she thought I was a collectivist or a slacktivist, or of course I'm not going to vote for her, we had different ideologies. She just sort of written me off. But I decided to embroider a handkerchief, as you do, and I wrote on it, this is a replica, hers has got flowers on over there, but I decided I wanted to say I do care about this, and I want to see how we can work together where possible and challenge each other where we disagree. And I put, dear my MP, as my MP, I'm asking you to please use your powerful position to challenge injustices, change structures keeping people poor, and fight for a more just and fair world. I know being an MP is a tough and big job, but please don't blow it in capital letters in case you didn't get the link. This is your chance to make a real positive difference, smiley face. Yours in hope, Sarah, with my surname and my postcode, so she knew I was a constituent. And I went and met her because she has to meet me, and I gave her this piece of small, delicate, soft craft that I'd spent ages making that was a little bit wobbly, went in with a smile and gently said, I'm new to the area, you're a new MP. Why are you an MP? What makes you want to change the world? What can I do to help? Where have we got passions the same? Where can we challenge each other? She opened up to me much more than any of my previous MPs, and I think it was because of this piece of craft. I'd invested in her, I'd showed her respect, and I wanted to be a good critical friend, work with each other where we could, which we did, and then try and understand where she was coming from, and I might change my mind if she, changed my mind for me, or at least I'd know where people were coming from and be more educated and strategic in trying to be a good global citizen and see where we could work together and where I need to work in other places. But it was about gently challenging people and being critical friends rather than aggressive enemies. The third and final issue I want to talk about today, and worry I had, is that activism tends to, people roll their eyes. Lots of people have talked about when they say what their job is in a dinner party. When I used to say I'm a campaigner or I'm an activist, people didn't want to talk to me because it's depressing, because it's sad, because they might think I'm judging them or being aggressive or saying, nitpicking on all the things that they're doing. It is very, it's not an attractive thing to do, and it can be quite elitist. I love reading Vogue. I don't ride a bike. I'm not vegan. I'm more of an introvert. Lots of reasons I didn't feel like I fitted into a lot of traditional activist groups. And I also wanted to strive for hope and not be depressed by all these awful things in the world. Psychologists talk about how we need to have a goal, and when we visualize it, our brain figures out how to get there. So why, when it comes to activism, do we focus on the crap and just stay focused on that awful stuff and not figure out how to get somewhere? We'd have a much stronger argument if we said, this is what we want the world to be like, this is how we get there, and therefore we probably shouldn't do these things or not even acknowledge those things and give them free airtime. I want activism to be joyful. I'm struggling with this word joyful, and I might change it. But it doesn't mean I want it to be fun, but I do want it to be fulfilling. I want us to keep striving for a better world. I know we can do it. We've done it in the past. We can do it again. There's lots of amazing technologies that are happening now. I want us to keep focusing on the hope in the world and not be focused on the despair and get depressed. All of my work is trying to be hopeful. All of it's trying to provoke us, but to be better people, to be better communities, to challenge ourselves so that we feel like we've achieved something brilliant. And now I have people all over the world who join me in my craftivism. I started doing it in 2008 because I saw the link and I thought it could be really interesting, and no one else was doing any projects and there weren't any groups I could join. And people all over around the world, whether they were creative introverts, whether they were burnt out activists, and lots of people in between asked if they could join in. They said, oh, you know, this looks interesting, I'm a bit nervous of that, and can I sort of mull over some of these big questions I've got, and can you help me with that? Now I work with organisations around the world, I work with charities, I work with art institutions, I do stuff with universities, and I teach students around the world, and I produce things like kits for craftivists wherever they are in a group or on their own, and I even have a little book to help with people, and there's lots more to do to support people. But if my activism wasn't joyful, if it wasn't focusing on where we could be rather than where we are, people wouldn't be excited or invigorated, they wouldn't be inspired, they wouldn't want to join in for as long as they have. So for me, activism needs to be three things. We need to make sure we have really strong foundations in what we do, and then we always focus on what's our moral compass, and everything we do, does that fit with it or does it not? We need that inner activism, and craft is brilliant for critical thinking. When we engage people, we need to do it in a gentle way. We need to reach out to people, we need to understand each other, we need to see where we can work together and where we can challenge each other, but in a respectful and in a dignified way, whether it's with a victim or with a perpetrator. We need dignity throughout everything we do, otherwise we're just discredited. And we need to focus on what incredible things we want to flourish. What world do we want to live in? How do we make things blossom? How do we get there rather than focus on the nitty-gritty and the minutiae and the depressing things? I want activism to be redesigned, reclaimed, maybe renamed. I'm using craft as a way to thread activism throughout my life, and I think it's a really useful tool for lots of other people. But I think we need to be good global citizens and make change one stitch at a time. Thank you very much.